conference to amplify the call for amnesty for all anti-racist protesters. We are calling to stop the harassing and the doxing of protesters and organizers. My name is Anna Edwards, and I am a member of the Defenders for Freedom, Justice, and Equality, and we are calling this action in conjunction with Justice and Reformation, and we are here to really emphasize the fact that we are in a real struggle against repression, and that one of the most important things that we need to focus on as we go forward is our unity in this effort. This is not a perfect movement, but this is a profound movement, and it is very important that we stand together no matter what happens. That is going to be key, because you know that the other side will work to divide us at every opportunity. So please keep that in mind. You're going to be hearing from a range of speakers who have either themselves or represent or know of people who have experienced the repression that we are talking about and have statements to make in regards to this issue. You will hear from, the first speaker that you are going to hear from is Michaela Hatton. She is an activist and a recent graduate of the VCU School of Social Work.
Hello everyone, my name is Michaela, and I want to thank everyone for being here today to stand in solidarity with those who are on the front lines and those who are facing charges for being on the front lines. During this movement, like hundreds of others that have come before us, everyone plays a very vital role in order to keep things going and build something new that is safer than what was presented before. Whether or not this has to be at home printing, posting, calling, donating, or on the streets marching and reclaiming space, everyone's part is crucial. But today we are specifically calling for the support of those on the front lines and those who have been now labeled as criminals or terrorists or militants for fighting in defense for Black lives. There is nothing criminal about protesting for the human rights of the most marginalized and oppressed communities in this country. As we call on amnesty for all protesters, it is important that we recognize the way in which our society, and specifically the Commonwealth, defines crime and deviancy. Protesters have now been labeled as criminals, face serious charges, and are being harassed and doxxed from their jobs. But the officers sworn in to protect and serve our communities have no label for running over individuals, shooting people in the body and in the head with flashbangs and rubber bullets, which has resulted in serious bodily injury and bruising for many, or for using chemical weapons against children, the elderly, and for those with disabilities. The individuals who are fighting against that same brutality are the only ones who are facing jail time. So again, we call on the amnesty of protesters to end the harassment and doxing of those on the front lines, and for an abundance of support from the community, and for those who are putting their bodies at risk to demand a new, safe, and equitable city. If you can't be on the front lines, drop off supplies to actions, connect with someone out there, and ask how you can show up for them. Maybe bring them a home-cooked meal, ask if you can pay for them to get a massage, see if they need help with anything, or simply hold space for them to talk about what they're feeling in that moment. Our city has become a traumatic war zone, and we all need each other, and we are so much stronger together. So again, thank you for being present in this moment to show solidarity, and please continue to support the actions that will persist until all of our demands are met.
Our next speaker is going to be Omarion Qaddafi. He is a community activist and a Legal Aid Justice Center housing organizer.
Good afternoon. It is great to see everyone here today in support of our cause. As many of you know, I am currently involved in a legal matter here, and for that reason, I'm limited as to what I can say today. However, I am truly grateful and appreciative for all the support that I've been shown and for all the support that has been shown to others that are involved in the movement. It is a constant reminder that the people of this city do care about our cause and want to see change as much as I do. Thank you.
is Brienne Armbrust. She is a community activist.
My name is Brienne Armbrust. It's pronounced Brienne, not Brienne. If you know me, you'll pronounce it correctly. I am speaking as an individual, and my opinions are my own. Yet while I do know this, I know that I am not alone as I speak. Since May 29th, I've tweeted almost daily in an attempt to keep folks safe from police violence in our city. I very deliberately am not a leader of anything. I simply love the city of Richmond and the people in it, and I don't want to see harm to come to anyone. Like you, I'm not perfect, but I always stand up to and call out injustice as I see it. For my entire life, I've seen the racist systems in this country cause actual harm to my friends and chosen family. Police began violent attacks in this city on May 29th. I've been shot at by police without warning as I was walking away. I've been tear gassed as I was helping the unhoused get away from police. I've been an activist and a community organizer for a long time, and I have never seen the level of police violence that I have seen over the course of the last couple of months. My story is not just my story. My story is the story of so many others, including those that have been out protesting and those that have not, those that have been in their houses or unhoused. I've seen some elected officials and those in power be complicit through their directives and their inaction as well. I believe those things should be brought to light. It's what I've done for a long time. Since June, I have been subject to extremely personal attacks and surveillance. That's why my hands are shaking. This includes doxing, the sharing of my personal information online, attacks on my employment, attacks on my family. In the last 2 months, I have grieved for the life that I had before this. I have grieved for my ability to feel okay and to feel safe. I recognize that okay and safe are privileges that many people don't have. But the level of personal attention being paid to me is disturbing. I have nothing to prove to anyone. I will not stand here and list my resume or my accomplishments. I will not tokenize the people in my life. I am confident about my decisions and the path that I found myself on. I give up myself to community, and I demonstrate that in how I live my life every day. My soul reconciles well with my heart and my mind in this moment. I will continue to stand up with others in the fight for Black lives and in the defense of the oppressed, the repressed, the suppressed, and the marginalized in our community. Black Lives Matter. Y'all be safe. I will too.
Our next speaker represents an organization. This is for Princess Blanding, is the co-founder of Justice and Reformation for Marcus David Peters.
Good afternoon. My name is Princess Blandon, and I am the sister of the late Marcus David Peters, an amazing Black man who was murdered by Richmond police officer Michael Qaddafi on May 14, 2018, while Marcus was unarmed, completely undressed, and experiencing a mental health crisis. I stand here today in solidarity with other organizers and community members to support all protesters whom have been physically attacked by both city and state police officers during the uprise against police brutality that was sparked by the unjust murder of George Floyd. I stand in support of all supporters who have been unjustly detained, charged for flexing their First Amendment rights to protest, along with those who are being harassed, threatened, and doxxed by police officers, elected officials, media, and so on. Please know that we will not sit in silence while this racist system and its pawns attack our community members. We will not sit in silence while the temporarily elected and appointed officials taunt officer safety first and always, with their actions speaking just as loud as their words. The way I see it is very simple. There would be no civil unrest if black people did not have to continuously be harassed, threatened, profiled, demonized, and murdered at the hands of this racist system that was never created to protect or serve black lives. Our wounds are deep and will not be healed by political jargon, black pawns set up in positions to do the work of the oppressors, black elected officials in Richmond. We see you and your actions are duly noted. I stand in solidarity with Omari, with Michaela, with Brienne, and the 250 other protesters who were attacked by terrorist police officers and then threatened with charges. We, the people, will continue to unite. We will continue to organize and fight this broken, unjust, racist system. We demand that all charges are dropped against all protesters, not later, but now. We demand the release of the names of all officers involved in acts of violence against protesters and charges be brought against them, not us. We demand that the case of Marcus David Peters be reopened and have an independent investigation by the FBI and Department of Justice to give Marcus a second chance at justice. Elected officials, hear me loud and clear. I am not afraid of any one of y'all. Your threats mean nothing to me. I will continue to fight to my last breath until very concrete legislative changes are made to show that Black Lives Matter. If you continue to refuse to take a stand for our community, to take a stand for black lives, and to stand for criminal justice reform, we the people will vote you out. We clearly understand and see that we the people have a lot of power. Now watch us keep using it. Thank you.
Our next organizational speaker is going to be Joseph Rogers for the Virginia Defenders for Freedom, Justice, and Equality.
Hello everyone, my name is Joseph Rogers. I'm a member of the Virginia Defenders for Freedom, Justice, and Equality. And I am here to stand in defense of protesters defending black lives. In an election year, protesters gathered and organized to prepare to take down a system that had brutalized black bodies for years before this. Those protesters were unsuccessful and their leader Gabriel was hanged. In the years that would come, additional protests would be organized. In the middle of the Civil War, women rose up to demand freedom, bread, or blood, while their sons and daughters and children and brothers were dying and left starving in the city of Richmond. They came together and said that they would stand for it no more, and they took what they wanted. In the 60s, 34 Richmonders sat down in the middle of a department store and insisted that they would be served. The commonalities between all of these people, of all of these groups, is that in every single instance they were demonized by the media, by the elected officials, and by everyone else who thought that they knew better than the people who were demanding for their own freedom. And the other commonality with those groups has been that history has not been kind to the people who oppose them. And history will not be kind to the people who oppose the protesters now. So as we are thinking and defending and standing with those who are standing up for black lives and for black futures, we must remember that this is not new, that this is a pattern, and that this is something that we can stop right here and right now. We have to remind ourselves that it is not just good enough to not be the people who are calling out the protesters as terrorists, as adjacent to the Klan, as people who are not deserving of our time and attention or our support. That is, in fact, it is important for us to make sure that we are standing with and vocally supporting those people who are out there in the streets right now, putting their bodies at risk so that we can have the rights and freedoms that we justly deserve. There have been many times in this city's history where we simply thought that we could just not say anything and let it play out on its own. And every single time, that has resulted in failure. Because after all, the defenders for freedom, justice, and equality were out here in 2007 saying that the Robert E. Lee Monument should be coming down. And we're glad that everybody is now on the same page. But maybe if folks had listened in the first place, and this is not about the defenders, but if we had listened in the first place and not said that, oh, they're just starting up and rousing up some trouble that wasn't there, maybe if we had taken the time to listen to the voices that are saying and crying out for help, we would be proactive in solving these things and never have to get to this point. So as we move forward, we are calling on Colette McEachin, the Commonwealth's attorney, to drop all the charges against the protesters who have put their bodies on the line as quickly as she has dropped the charges against the people who brutalized them. We are calling for a sustained defense of those protesters, because the protesters do not get paid for this. We do not stand here and get training on what to do, how to de-escalate a situation, or how best and most appropriately to conjoin ourselves or present ourselves. All we can do is come out with our hearts open, our minds committed to justice, and our bodies in the way. And we must stand with all of those who are willing to take up that important work. So join us and stay with us and keep up the fight. And I'm hoping to make sure that we are still together throughout the end of this, because this is not going to be the last uprising. This will not be the only time where we have to do this. Our children are probably going to have to do this. Our grandchildren are going to have their own sustained protests, because we're going to overlook things, y'all. It's just what happens. We never get it right completely every single time. But we must create a culture where we protect those who are telling us where we got it wrong. So stand with us today, stand with us tomorrow, stand with us every day, so that when our children take up the struggle after us, they know that they will be defended and protected, and members of a community that stands for freedom, justice, and equality. Thank you.
Our next organizational representative is Johanse, and Johanse represents the Legal Aid Justice Center.
Good day. I want to thank the Virginia Defenders, Freedom, Justice, and Equality for their unfractured commitment to justice, for organizing this event here today in defense of the protesters. My name is Yvonne Whitaker, and I'm an organizer at the Legal Aid Justice Center. And the Legal Aid Justice Center condemns police violence and unapologetically stands in solidarity with Black, brown, and poor people in the global and local uprisings against racism. As an explicitly anti-racist organization, the Legal Aid Justice Center fights the injustices in the lives of individual Virginians while rooting out exploitative policies and practices that seek to control large segments of our society. Let's be clear. The theft of housing, education, workers' rights, health care, civil rights, and immigration rights is violence. The state perpetuates this violence against our clients on a daily basis. And we reject the devaluation of black, brown, and poor people's lives. Further, we affirm and will always affirm the value of human rights over property rights. We support our own Brother Omari and our other community organizations, including the Richmond Transparency and Accountability Project, who demand the establishment of meaningful civilian oversight, the Marcus Alert, the dropping of all charges against anti-racist protesters. Richmond is grieving, Richmond is angry, and we are targeting the violent systems that limit the life possibilities for black and brown people. We are deeply saddened by the assaults against protesters and organizers, many of whom are close affiliates and partners of ours. We urge all of our elected officials, particularly Commonwealth's Attorney Colette McKeachin, to show their support for Black lives with long overdue concrete next steps, including amnesty for all protesters. Thank you.
Our next organizational speaker is going to be Luka Connolly for the Richmond Community Bail Fund.
Hey y'all, my name's Luka and I demand she, her, hers pronouns. I serve as co-director for the Richmond Community Bail Fund. We were established 3.5 years ago to prevent pre-trial incarceration in Richmond by posting cash bails free of charge. To date, we've bailed out over 80 people in Richmond City and the surrounding counties. Before the uprising, our work consisted almost entirely of supporting poor folks who were referred to us from the Richmond Public Defenders or word of mouth and community. Folks have been given bails as high as $7,500. We've paid for court-ordered electronic monitors and transportation to and from pretrial services or court, and I've seen over and over and over the overwhelming financial, social, and emotional burdens imposed on those who are merely accused, not even convicted of a crime. Since the uprising for Black liberation has began, our work has shifted. We've continued our long-time work of supporting defendants whose charges are not protest-related, but now provide a 24/7 arrest hotline, distribute information at protests, stay awake running this hotline well after the protests end because people's partners or friends or chosen family are scared that their friends have been beaten or hurt by the police. We post bail, we give ride homes, we pay impound fees when folks are snatched out of their cars by the police. We coordinate pro bono attorneys. We gather supporters at the jail to feed and care for our recently released friends, some of whom are 17-year-olds, some of whom need immediate medical attention for tear gas burns, some held as long as 11 hours on a first-time misdemeanor charge, some held in buses or on the floor of a parking garage overnight with staff with no PPE. One held in jail for 5 days with a traumatic brain injury immediately rushed to the hospital post-release because of a rubber bullet to the skull. Another who needed surgery because Richmond City Jail medical staff refused to set or treat their broken hand. Many of them strip searched, some of them told by a magistrate they are being held overnight because they don't like their attitude. These protesters have experienced serious trauma that people, specifically Black, brown, and Indigenous people in Richmond, have been experiencing for hundreds of years. The last thing that these protesters need is the additional burden of a protracted, invasive court case. Because we've seen firsthand the violent repression of protesters by Richmond police, and because we're intimately familiar with Richmond's criminal punishment system, we echo the demands of the community in asking Commonwealth Attorney Colette McKeachin to drop all charges against all protesters. So we're not just talking about curfew charges. We're not just talking about people with no priors. All charges against all protesters. So there's a little bit of confusion about the function of the bail fund. I'm going to let y'all know there is a persistent myth in Richmond that we don't have cash bail, right? People hold this belief because time and time again we see Commonwealth attorneys running on a platform of no cash bail. So when these people ascend into power, we believe that cash bail has ended with that. But what the Commonwealth Attorney means is my staff will no longer advocate for cash bail to a judge. So judges and magistrates assign cash bail. They don't care about the Commonwealth Attorney's recommendation. And until it is litigated and legislated that cash bail is not a legal judgment in Virginia, they will continue to follow the career patterns. I mean, some of these judges have been on the bench for decades, y'all. They are going to keep assigning cash bail until we make it illegal in Virginia to do so. The Richmond Bail Fund has posted several bails for protesters since the uprising began, with the highest bail amounting to $3 grand. If we include non-protest related arrests, just since July 1st, we've posted over $25,000 in bonds for less than 8 people. So I don't want to hear there's no cash bail in Richmond, y'all. The presence and utility of cash bail in Richmond is still such that our community's freedom prior to conviction often comes at a price. Cash bail is one of many tools of repression the state is currently using against protesters and uses against Richmond community members every day. This decision to prosecute harms more than just the 250 people arrested for their participation in the George Floyd uprising. In Richmond and nationally, this mass prosecution of protesters has a chilling effect on the act of protest itself. Because the strategy is obvious. Fewer people will take to the streets if they're scared of getting popped, if they're scared of repression, if they're scared of a rubber bullet to the skull, right? In a country with this many injustices against black communities, this many crises and urgent need of care, we need protest. And once again, I'm asking Commonwealth Attorney Colette McEachin to drop all charges against all protesters and to reopen the case of Marcus David Peters' murder by Richmond police. Thank you.
The last statement is one that I will read, and then after I read it, we'll take questions, and then we will close the press conference. This is from the RVA Legal Collaborative. The RVA Legal Collaborative stands with Justice and Reformation, the Defenders, the Legal Aid Justice Center, and all others calling for an end to the unjust treatment of protesters and organizers of recent Black Lives Matter protests. The RVA Legal Collaborative seeks to help connect protesters of racial injustice and police brutality with pro bono lawyers. Our goal is to support those who are speaking out against systems, institutions, laws, and narratives that have marginalized, silenced, and terrorized by people of color for centuries. We have referred over 100 people to pro bono attorneys since June 1. Our clients have been arrested and arbitrarily strip searched. Our clients have been gassed, fired upon with rubber bullets, and hit with projectiles that can cause death and permanent injury. Their property has been lost, destroyed, and seized. They continue to be surveilled by the police, investigated, and unjustly charged with crimes because they have been exercising their constitutional rights to free speech and assembly. This must stop. We call for all charges against our clients and all others arrested while protesting to be dropped immediately. The recent protests have publicized what Black and brown communities face on a daily basis. Police harassment and intimidation that goes unchecked. We stand with others and commit to keep fighting such injustice. We will fight to ensure that the city of Richmond becomes a place where those exercising their First Amendment rights by calling for racial equity are not punished. We believe that our clients and every other person who protested exemplify the best of us. We thank you for your actions, we support you, and we will fight for you. The RVA Legal Collaborative can be reached at 804-404-8521 or at rvalegalcollaborative@gmail.com. If you have been charged with a crime while protesting, please contact us. I'm not sure I was supposed to read that to you, but I thought, why not take the moment? So we really want to thank everybody for being here. This is an important moment. It's an important punctuation mark and pause to take at this moment so that we do understand, so that you can see everybody here. So you know the people who are watching on Facebook or on Instagram or in any of the other ways that they are going to find out that the message goes out that we stand together. We are not throwing anyone under the bus. Nobody said we were striving for perfection. We're striving for justice.